والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. By the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have finished the discussion on At-Tahara, and as we mentioned before, At-Tahara is one of the prerequisites for Salah. We have to make sure that we remove the hadath and the najasat, all kind of najasat that talked about must be removed, and the hadath, whether it's hadath asghar or hadath akbar, must be also removed in order to be able to pray. So if you lose your wudu, then this hadath asghar, you have to remove it by making wudu. And in the case of hadath akbar, in the case of janaba or menstruation or the post-birth bleeding or nifas, then this janaba and haid or nifas that cause al-hadath al-akbar should be removed by making ghusl, taking shower, as we have discussed in details. And we always remember that this tahara is required before we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in prayer. Islam in general came to purify people, يزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. So the tazkiyah includes purification, internal and external. So before we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in salah, we must purify our body, purify the place, purify our clothes, and also purify our hearts. So now all these requirements and conditions and obligatory acts and sunan and adab and nawafil prepares us to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But before we talk about Salah, there are a number of issues that we need to discuss. Salah, and we'll talk, of course, about the obligatory act of Salah and the Nawafil, and we'll talk about the Adhan and the Iqama and the Masajid, and the times of Salah and the prerequisites of Salah, including facing Qibla and, of course, Tahara, and times of Salah and so on. But before we start talking about all these important subjects, we need to talk about the virtues of Salah in Islam. It's just a quick reminder of the place of Salah in Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a number of authentic hadith that Salah is the pillar of Islam. رأس الأمر الإسلام وعموده الصلاة. The amud, the pillar of Islam, is as-salah. And he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also said that it was the first act of worship that was made obligatory by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we all know when and where this was made obligatory. In the ascension, when Rasulullah went to the seventh heaven, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked to him, and he was informed then that these 5 prayers are due every day and night. And we know also from the different narrations that were made 50 and then reduced to 5. However, the reward remains for 50. So we'll pray 5 and get the reward of 50. We also know from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Salah is the first act that the person will be held responsible for before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Day of Judgment. The first thing that the angel will check after Tawheedullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how is his or her prayer? So they will check the prayer. And in the authentic hadith also, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the angels will examine the prayer and how perfect it is, and if they found any defect, imperfection, shortcomings, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell the angels to look at the nawafil. انظروا هل لعبدي من تطوع. Does he have any tatawwu? So they will find out that there are plenty of dhuhrs where we're missing, many prayers that we made after the time with no valid excuse. Some of them the wudu was not really good, or maybe he did not attend class of fiqh, so he doesn't know how to do it, so he used to do it wrong, right? So there are plenty of things that's not really sound, not good. So does he have any tatawwu'? Yes, he has plenty of tatawwu'. He prayed in Mecca and Medina, and he prayed Taraweeh, and he prayed many nawafil. So they will take from this nawafil, or sunnah prayers, and make up any defect in his fara'id. This is one of the reasons why we are recommended to pray as many nawafil as possible. So this nawafil prayer will make up for any defect in our obligatory salah. Also, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that it will be the last thing that Rasulullah sallallahu recommended to his people before he died. So it was the first thing that made obligatory, first act of worship made obligatory, and the last thing, one of the last words the Prophet ﷺ said when he was very sick. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "As-salah, as-salah, wa ma malakat aymanukum. As-salah, ay usikum bis-salah." This is my reminder, my recommendation. This is my will to you. As-salah, as-salah. Now, those who study grammar, it is مفعول به فعل محذوف تقديره إلزام الصلاة. Adhere to as-salah. That's what it means. As-salah, as-salah. Don't miss your salah. And it will be the last thing taken away from Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us that لَتُنْقَضَنَّ عُرَى الْإِسْلَامِ عُرْوَةٌ عُرْوَةٌ. If Islam were stripped away, piece by piece, people would hold tight to the next one. One piece will be missed, people will hold fast to the second one. It will be also stripped away, then people will hold to the next one, and so on. So what was the last thing that if it does not exist, then Islam will not exist? So Rasulullah said the first thing taken would be governance, ruling of governance. Right? It's not going to be Islam. It's not going to be based on the example that Rasulullah produced. Right? This is the first thing will be taken away. And this happened a few years after his death, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? This is the first thing that will be taken away. And the last thing, the very last thing, behind which there is no more Islam, is salah. So if there is no salah, then there is no Islam. Also, salah is very important to the point that one cannot miss salah even if he is traveling or sick, or even at the time of war. You know, in the old days, fighting was not like today. You can fight at any time, and you sit in the room and you send a drone or launch a missile or something like this. I mean, people fight in the daytime, so they fight from early morning until the sun sets. So, in some cases, the Sahaba, the battle of Al-Khandaq, the trench, they fought the whole day, so they did not pray. They had no time to pray. You know, the enemies are behind this trench trying to cross to Al-Madinah, and they are pushing them back. So you cannot afford to leave the scene. You have to push them back all the time. So after Maghrib, Rasulullah ﷺ said, "May Allah fill their homes and their graves fire," as they prevented us from praying. And he named Salat al-Wusta, Salat al-Asr in particular. He could not pray Asr until late after Maghrib. Right? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed for this ummah what's known as Salatul Khawf. Salatul Khawf. Person, even while he's praying, he may pray. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa described how to pray. وَإِذَا كنت فيهم فأقمت لهم الصلاة فلتقم طائفة منهم معك. Allah told them that let half of the army join you in prayer, and then during the tashahhud they pray 2 rak'ah by themselves, and they go and guard you, and the other group come and join you in prayer. So you divide yourself into 2 groups, one pray and other guard, and the guardians come and pray, and those who are praying, they take their place. While traveling, you must pray. It's salah is not, there's no excuse for someone to miss his prayer, even while praying. Right? فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا حافظوا على الصلاة والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين فإن خفتم فرجالا أو ركبانا. If you are afraid, you are traveling, you are afraid that some thieves will come and attack you, you can pray while walking or while you're riding your ride. But if you are sick, you can pray only with your back or with your head or even with your eyes. If you don't have water, make tayammum. You don't even know how to make tayammum, you don't have dirt to use for tayammum, just pray as you are. So that's how important it is. This is how important salah is. حافظوا على الصلاة والصلاة الوسطى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, guard your prayer. والصلاة الوسطى in particular, especially الصلاة الوسطى. Especially الصلاة الوسطى. Which salah is al-wusta? Many different opinions. Some said every salah is salah wusta, because it's between salah, there's salah before and salah after, so therefore every salah is salah wusta. Others said it's dhuhr, and others said it's asr, and the majority of the ulama is with the opinion that it is salat al-asr. We'll come to this inshallah. How about those who don't pray? Big question, right? If this is salah, this is the importance of salah. Keep in mind that the pillars of Islam are 5, right? 3 of them are not obligatory for some people. If you're not wealthy enough, then zakah is not obligatory for you. If you cannot fast because you are too old and too weak, then you don't have to fast. You can feed one person. If you don't have the means to perform Hajj, then Hajj is dropped for you, right? But Salah, everybody has to pray. Everybody must pray, right? Salah. If Salah is so important, how about those who do not pray? I don't want to again use the majority and minority, but many Muslims do not pray. As if Salah is like, it is recommended, or it's just good for you to pray. And people now, when you talk about someone, what? He prays 5 times a day. Oh, mashallah, prays 5 times a day. As if it's something that, unique to this person. I mean, this family, there's someone who prays 5 times a day. This is how inconsistent Muslims are with their deen, with their ibadah, their salah. Right? When they know someone prays 5 times a day, it's very regular in his salah, they say, wow, mashallah, he's so religious. What makes him so religious? He prays 5 times a day. Mashallah. But if someone does not pray 5 times a day, what kind of Muslim this person is? It becomes like the norm not to pray. Right? You do pray occasionally. Maybe sometimes in a while. Okay, he's a moderate Muslim. He's not too religious. Because too religious is not good. Right? So, now, how about those who do not pray? The ulama differentiate between the one who does not pray, because he does not believe Salah is obligatory, is one of the pillars of Islam. And then there's ijma', all Muslim scholars. They said the one who denied the fact that Salah is must, is obligatory, then he's kafir, because he denied something that's well established in the Quran, in the Sunnah of the Prophet, and the ijma' of the Muslim Ummah. The entire Muslim Ummah, including those who do not pray, they know that it is fard, right? But how about those who believe it is fard, but they don't pray because they are lazy, out of laziness? it is so sad actually to talk about people who live in this world and they know there's hell and heaven and they know that Allah is the Lord and Creator, and they don't pray because they have so many more important things than Salah. So Salah is not as important. Inshallah, maybe in Ramadan, inshallah. You know what? I'm waiting until I make Hajj. From the moment I make Hajj, inshallah, I will be regular in Salah. Or I will wear hijab when I make Hajj. You know, people always try to find an excuse or something to delay their adherence to Salah. When Ramadan comes, when I retire, when I make Hajj, all these kind of things. But they do not deny that it is fard, it is obligatory. So how about these people? Again, many scholars said no, there's no difference between the two. The one who's late, he knows Salah is wajib. If he's not Muslim and just convert to Islam, he does not know until he knows, until someone tells him, maybe he has an excuse. But now, once you know it is wajib, then there's no excuse for you to leave the Salah. When Rasulullah said Mu'adh to Yemen, he told him, invite them to Allah, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, tawheed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they accept that, let them know that they must pray 5 times a day. If they respond to that, then let them know that there is zakah. So Salah is the pillar of the deen. There's no Salah, there's no deen. So some ulama, I would say, many ulama said that those who do not pray without any valid excuse, then they are not Muslims. They are not Muslims. And there are a number of ahadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in this regard. He said between a person and kufr is ignoring his salah, abandoning his salah. Between a person and kufr, abandoning his salah. If you abandon salah, then so this is a very clear statement, hadith narrated by Imam Muslim, Imam Ahmad, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi and others. Right? Another hadith in this meaning, العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. There were plenty of munafiqeen, and Rasulullah said, what's between us and them is salah. If they abandon their salah, then فمن تركها, whoever abandons salah is kafir. Very clear statement by Rasulullah sallallahu. Also hadith by Imam Ahmad and many others. Another hadith also narrated by Imam Ahmad, Tabarani and others. Rasulullah sallallahu talked about salah and he said, "Man hafadha alayha kanat lahu nuran wa burhanan wa najatan yawm al-qiyamah." Whoever guards salah, pray in time, it will be light, burhan, proof, najah, safety in the day of judgment. Whoever guards his salah, pray on time, it will be light, evidence or proof, and safety in the day of judgment. And whoever abandons salah, it will not be light, or in other words, he will have no light, no burhan, no safety in the day of judgment, and he will be with Qarun, Fir'aun, Haman, Ubay ibn Khalaf. Look at these four names. Qarun, Fir'aun, Haman. The always really mentioned together in the Quran Kareem. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا مُوسَى بِآيَاتِنَا وَسُلْطَانٍ إِلَى فِرْعَوْنَ وَهَامَانَ وَقَارُونَ. You know Fir'aun, everybody knows who Fir'aun is, right? And Haman, he was he was the leader of his army. The what do you call it? The chief of staff of the Ministry of Defense, something like this. And Haman was one of the wealthiest people. There was no Forbes magazine at that time, but he was the wealthiest person. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about his wealth. And Ubay ibn Khalaf, one of the leaders of Quraysh, one of the strongest enemies against Islam and Muslims. Why these people? Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, he looked at these four names and he said that whoever abandoned his salah because of his position and political authority, then he's going to be with Fir'aun. And whoever leaves it for his power and military and so on will be with Haman. Whoever abandons his salah because of his money and business will be with Qarun. And whoever abandons salah because of his business, Ubay ibn Khalaf was also a businessman, he will be with Ubay ibn Khalaf. This is his opinion. Whether this is the case or not, but imagine someone is, gathered in the Day of Judgment with one of these four people. Is going to be like them. So what does this mean? It means that a person who does not pray is going to be with these people. عن عبد الله بن شقيق القيلي قال كان أصحاب محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يرون شيئا من الأعمال تركوه كفر غير الصلاة. Sahaba radiallahu anhu did not see anything that which if abandoned, then the person is kafir except salah. In other words, they agreed that when someone abandons his salah is considered non-Muslim. This is hadith narrated by Imam Tirmidhi, Al-Hakim and others. Number of other hadith in this meaning. Other scholars, especially Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he said, Imam Malik also, and Abu Hanifa, they said that the one who does not pray or missed his prayer with no valid excuse is not necessarily kafir like the Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and other people, but he's not totally kafir. Because if you ask one of these people who do not pray, you may be surprised that he performed Hajj or he fasted Ramadan. And he buried that there is no God but Allah, Muhammad is Rasulullah, and so on. So they said he committed one of the kaba'ir, the great sins. And big sins are called kufr in some contexts. So like in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sibabul muslim fusuq wa qitaluhu kufr. If you curse a Muslim, that's fisq. And if you fight against a Muslim, this is an act of kufr. But does not necessarily mean the person is kafir. So it's a big thing. It's a huge sin. But does not mean that he is kafir like the person who denies the presence of God or he believes in other gods. They're not equal. And they quoted the ayat that it says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَنْ يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah said that. The only sin that Allah does not forgive is shirk. Anything less than shirk, Allah may forgive. So based on this ayah, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i and others, they said, based on this, abandoning prayer is a big sin, but it could be included in this ayah that Allah may forgive the person who does not pray or does not fast. And the other hadith of shafa'ah that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, according to hadith in Bukhari, the most fortunate people who will receive my shafa'ah are those who said La ilaha illallah sincerely. So if someone said La ilaha illallah even once sincerely, then he will be included in the shafa'ah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in other words, this person could be forgiven. Allah can forgive him, according to the ayah and this hadith. They also narrated this debate between Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad, they used to respect each other very, very highly. Imam Ahmad used to speak very highly about Imam Shafi'i. His son Abdullah did not see Imam Shafi'i, and he said, I always hear you say Imam Shafi'i, and you always praise him, you always talk very highly about him. So and Imam Ahmad told him, Ya Bunayya, Al-Shafi'i to the people is like the sun to this world, and health to the body. This is how much we need him. This is his knowledge, right? We cannot live without the sun. We cannot live without good health. So Shafi'i, for the ilm and knowledge, is like, so they used to respect each other very much. And Imam Shafi'i also used to rely on Imam Ahmad because he's a muhaddith. He knows plenty of hadith, so he used to ask him about the hadith, authenticity, and so on. So Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, said that the one who does not pray because of laziness is kafir, is not Muslim. So Imam Shafi'i asked him, so he told him that, so how can he become Muslim? What does he need to do to pray? Imam Ahmad said, to start praying. He said, if he's kafir, salah is not accepted from kafir. See the point? It was a very, very nice discussion. Imam Shafi'i said, you think he's kafir? He said, yes. What does he need to do to become Muslim? He said, start praying. But salah is not accepted from a kafir. So, in other words, if he prays, then his salah does not mean anything. So Imam Shafi'i said, Imam Ahmad said, well, he become Muslim if he says shahada. And Imam Shafi'i said, the guy does not deny shahada, he says shahada. So in other words, he's not really kafir. So Imam Ahmad did not respond. So in other words, that Imam Shafi'i suggested that if Islam, or if someone comes to Islam by shahada, the guy have no problem with shahada, he says shahada. Right? So this is the second opinion, that he's not kafir, but he or she is committing a great sin, big sin. And this issue, by the way, is always raised in the time of janazah. People say, this guy never comes to the masjid. He does not pray. We have never seen him praying. So therefore, he's not Muslim, and therefore, don't bring his body to the masjid. And even if the body is brought, and many people decide not to do the janazah prayer. And as I mentioned before, the one who commits suicide, he committed a big sin, and Allah knows what led this person, what kind of mental illness he or she has that led them, what kind of medicine they used to take that, led them to commit such an act. And people usually refuse to pray janazah on this person, and that's not correct. Even if someone committed suicide for no reasonable excuse, then we must pray janazah. Because he's Muslim, she is Muslim. Those who say La ilaha illallah are considered Muslim, right? So we treat them as such, right? So the next point will be if who must pray. Everyone who is Muslim and an adult should attain the age of puberty. This is the time when a person becomes responsible, with the first menstruation for girls and the first wet dream for boys, or ihtilal. Right? So, however, Rasulullah ﷺ told us that we should train our children to pray earlier than this age. And the hadith that we all know, that Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Muru awladakum bis-salati hum abna'u sab'a." Teach your children to pray, to be consistent in their prayer at the age of 7, and discipline them if they don't pray at the age of 10. At the age of 10, it becomes more serious. Right? So between 7 and 10, just remind them, take them with you, let them pray next to you. And then for 3 years, that's good enough for them to understand the value of salah. And then if they mess with their prayer and they're 10, then you need to show them that's a serious issue. Right? Don't torture them, but at least show them it's a serious matter. Right? You have to take it seriously. Although technically they are not responsible until the age, for some, varies from one person to the other, 14, 15, 16, but they need to be trained to pray before they reach this point. How many obligatory prayer every day? Right? Again, we'll talk about witr and also another views that witr is wajib. In other words, a must. The majority of the scholars are with the opinion that there are only 5 obligatory prayers. 5 صلوات كتبهن الله على الناس. 5 prayers. These are the Subh, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. Anything else is tatawwa or nafl or mustahab or mandub, as we will talk about all these kind of prayers that we pray. But the 5 only obligatory prayers are the 5 daily prayers. As-salawat al-khams, bunya al-islam ala khams. And the Bedouin guy came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he said, Ya Rasulullah, akhbirni ma faradallahu alayya min as-salawat. Tell me, what are the obligatory prayers that Allah wants me to perform? And he said, As-salawat al-khams illa an tatawwa shay'an. 5 prayers until or unless you want to offer more nawafil. And then he asked about siyam. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told him, fasting Ramadan, unless you want to fast more, it's up to you. Zakah, he told him, and Hajj once in your lifetime. And this man was very frank and honest, and he said, I will, وَالَّذِي أَكْرَمَكَ لَا أَتَطَوَّعُ وَلَا أَنْقُصُ مِمَّا فَرَضَ اللَّهُ عَلَيَّ شَيْءٍ. I will not offer more or less than this. No less, no more. 5 prayers, 5 prayers. Ramadan, no fasting before or after Ramadan. Zakah, no more sadaqah. That zakah is enough. Hajj, once in my lifetime, no more. I will never add or delete from this. I will never offer more or less than this. So what did Rasulullah ﷺ say? He said, أَفْلَحَ إِن صَدَقَ, or دَخَلَ الْجَنَّةَ إِن صَدَقَ. He will go to paradise if he is truthful to what he said. That's very profound. Very, very profound. I'm not discouraging you from praying nawafil. In fact, we should do the opposite. We should offer as many nawafil as possible, but we sometimes make the link between Jannah and nawafil. I would mix fard with nafil. All the time. We always mix fard with nafil and teach people like Isha is 17 rak'ah or 17 Isha is 17 rak'ah. That's wrong. That is wrong. I understand that parents want their children to follow the tradition and to pray all the nawafil, which is good, but I'm afraid that it might lead to the other result, that people will abandon all the 17. But we need to teach people that these 4 are obligatory, but it's good to pray these nawafil. We need to teach people, we have to be honest. Tell people this is the fard, and recommend it to do this nawafil as well, as much as we can. Right? But we teach people, Isha is 17 and Fajr is 4, it's not true. So this man said, I will not pray any nafil. I will keep the 5, I will pray in time and everything, but I will not have. And Rasulullah said he will go to paradise if he did that. Right? So we can make things difficult on ourselves, but we have to make it easy for others. I'm afraid we are doing the opposite sometimes. Sometimes we pick the easy opinions and take it for ourselves, and we teach people, teach them, everything. You have to take the whole package. This is salah. If you want to pray salah, if you want to make it obligatory upon yourself, fine. If you want to make it obligatory upon yourself, you can say, Ya Allah, I promise you, I'll pray 17 rak'ah every Isha. I'll do that. I'll try to be consistent with that. Fine, that's good. But never claim it's Allah who made it fard. No. And never teach people that. Right? We need to always distinguish between fard and nafil. Right? We will talk more about this because I know witr is according to Hanafi madhab is wajib. Wajib means that you will be, responsible or held accountable if you don't do. You'll be punished if you don't do it. Like also Salat al-Eid and so on. This is, against the majority of the madhahib. Witr is highly recommended. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was very consistent with praying witr. He never missed witr. But not to the point where you can say that you'll be punished if you do not pray witr. We'll talk about this more when we come to talk about witr and other nawafil, but the other ulama or the other madhab, they call sunnah mu'akkada. Sunnah mu'akkada means it is confirmed, so it's consistent. Rasulullah said do it, and he did it consistently, but does it make it obligatory? This is where the difference between Hanafi madhab and others came. Now, talking about the times of salah, because salah must be performed on time. We can delay it a little bit, but we cannot pray before time, right? And many brothers ask this question. I remember those who work early morning shifts, and they Fajr becomes very late in the winter time. So they start like, let's say 6 o'clock, and Fajr begins at 6:30. And it's very difficult for them, to take a break after 1 hour, half an hour from the beginning, right? So they always ask, Imam, can we pray Fajr like before 6 o'clock? 5 o'clock, 5:30 or something like that. The general ruling is that we cannot perform salah before time, except in the case of combining the prayer, when we pray Dhuhr and Asr, in the case of traveling, or Maghrib and Isha. We can pray Asr with Dhuhr at the time of Dhuhr. We can pray Isha with Maghrib at the time of Maghrib. This is the only exception for that. But we cannot pray otherwise before the time. So what are the times? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا. Right? So the word kitab means fard, so wajib. Mawquta, it's time. That must be performed in a particular time. Kitaban mawquta. There are some hints in the Quran al-Kareem also. أقم الصلاة طرفي النهار وزلفا من الليل. طرفي النهار is Fajr and Asr. This is the taraf, the طرفي النهار. وزلفا من الليل. Fajr, the beginning of the day, and Asr is the last prayer of the day. Maghrib and Isha is زلفا من الليل. إن الحسنات يذهبن السيئات. أقم الصلاة لدلوك الشمس إلى غسق الليل. So دلوك الشمس is the zawal time, the dhuhr time. إلى غسق الليل. So this includes dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib and Isha. وقرآن الفجر, then Fajr comes. دلوك الشمس, zawal, to غسق الليل. This includes the 4 prayers, dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha. وقرآن الفجر. Okay. قرآن الفجر إن قرآن الفجر كان مشهودا. So these are some hints in the Quran regarding the time of Salah. But let's talk more about the Sunan and Hadith that came that told us about the timing of Salah. Jibreel alayhi salam came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to teach him how to pray and when to pray. So one day, this hadith, Jabir, is a very famous hadith, when Jibreel came to lead Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in prayer, and they prayed Dhuhr. He came to him in the beginning of Dhuhr. In the beginning of Dhuhr time, the time called Zawal, right? So Zawal happens when the sun exactly becomes in the middle of the sky and starts going towards west. Right? So in the morning, before that, from the sunrise until Zawal, there is shade. You have a shade, right? So your shade usually or generally point towards west, because the sun comes from east, so your shade would be usually towards west. Or it could be southwest, northwest, and anything in between. And until gradually, around nowadays, let's say 1:35, the sun will be exactly in the top of your head, and you will lose this shade. There will be no more shade, right? Once you start developing shade, this is the time of Zawal. For the word Zawal, what does the word Zawal mean linguistically?
It's decline.
Decline? Huh? Zenith. You are mentioning the technical meaning, but literally the origin of the word. Disappearance or departure. How about departure? Right? So when something departs or is removed is called zawal, right? So zawal in this context means that the sun left its place in the middle of the sky and starts going towards west, right? And at this time takes, by the way, this before zawal it takes about 10-15 minutes when there's no shade. And this is a time of karah, which we'll talk about also later on. Time of karah, it's makruh to pray this time. When there's no shade, when the sun is exactly in the middle of the sky. So 10, 12, even 15 minutes before dhuhr, we should not pray, unless there's a reason for that. In fact, you come to the masjid, you want to pray 2 rak'ahs or so on. So Jibreel alayhi salam came to teach Rasulullah the times of prayers. He came to him two times, in 2 days. In the first day, he prayed in the beginning of the time, and the second day, he prayed in the end of the time, to show him that this is the time of dhuhr, for example. Right? So, the beginning of the time, when this zawal happens, right? And the end of dhuhr time, which was kind of also point of disagreement between Hanafi on one side and all other madhahib on the other side, right? And then Asr, the beginning of Asr and the end of Asr, which is sunset, right? And then the beginning of Maghrib, which is the end of Asr, right? And the end of Maghrib time and the beginning of Isha time, which also, again, another point of disagreement between Hanafi and the rest of the madhahib. The shafaq, the absence of or disappearance of shafaq al-ahmar or shafaq al-abyad. There is shafaq ahmar, the red twilight on the horizon, and then it's followed by the white thing. So according to the majority of the ulama, Shafi'i, Maliki and Hanbali, the disappearance of Ash-Shafaq al-Ahmar is the end of the beginning of Salat al-Isha. But according to the Hanafi madhab, the absence of the white Shafaq is the beginning of Isha. That's why our Isha here in this community is very late considering to other masajid who go with the Shafaq al-Ahmar. So Shafaq al-Ahmar makes Salat al-Isha about 15-20 minutes earlier than our Salah here. And this is something we are discussing now. We had a wonderful meeting with Dr. Khalid Shawkat, last Wednesday. And he explained to us the difference between madhahib and his methodology and so on. If you want, we can talk more about this. So Jibreel alayhi salam came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the beginning of the time and towards the end of the time to pray the same prayer. Right? So the first day he came to Rasulullah and said, "Qum fasalli, fasalla dhuhra hina zalat ash-shams." He prayed with Rasulullah dhuhr when the sun start moving towards west, the time of zawal, which now we can find in the adhan time of dhuhr. This is when the sun starts moving towards west. And next day he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to pray dhuhr when the shade of an object becomes similar to the object itself. You see the point? So if you used to have this like a stick. So when the shade has the same length of the stick itself, right? Let's say a yard, and the shade is a yard, then this is the end of dhuhr and the beginning of asr. Right? And next day, also first day he came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to pray asr when the shade is equal to the object, and then he came to the next day when the shade is double the object itself. Twice as long as the object itself. In both days he came and prayed Maghrib at the same time, after the sun set. And the first day he prayed Isha with him when the Shafaq disappeared. And he came next day and he prayed Isha with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam after or at midnight. So to indicate that this is between this time and this time is the time of Isha. For Fajr, he came first day when the Fajr Sadiq, called Fajr Sadiq, appeared, and next day he came and prayed with him Fajr when there was plenty of light in the sky, but still the time of Fajr before the sun rises. Again, to indicate this is the so from the beginning of Fajr, when you observe this white light, it's called Fajr Sadiq. This is the beginning, so we can pray Fajr from this moment. So the time we have here, called Adhan, this is the beginning. So the time when we call the Adhan, so you can pray at that time. You can pray, and you should start your fasting from that time. And when you see the sun rise, any time before the sunrise, the third column you see here, right? This is the end of Salat al-Fajr. So you can put simple by saying that every Salah time ends with the beginning of next Salah except Fajr. So Fajr does not end at Dhuhr, it ends at sunrise. That's why we always, on any calendar, they show you the sunrise. Why? Because it's the end of Salat al-Fajr. Right? You can pray, you will have almost an hour, 15 minutes, an hour, 20 minutes or so. You can pray at any moment there. Right? So, other hadith in Sahih Muslim, Rasulullah said, وَقْتُ الظُّهْرِ إِذَا زَالَتِ الشَّمْسِ. That's clear. The beginning of Dhuhr time is after Zawal, and until the dhil, the shade, is as long as the object. And the time of Asr, from that time until Malam Tasfar Shams, when the sun becomes very yellowish. You know, when the sun is high at the time of Asr, is different from the shape of the sun, the color of the sun. When it goes down, it did not set yet, but it becomes very yellow, like orange. Like today, it's very orange. Have you seen that? So, does this mean that if you pray before Maghrib, 1 minute before Maghrib, will this count? It does count as Asr, but it's makruh to delay Salat al-Asr that late. We will talk more actually about this. وَوَقْتُ صَلَاةِ الْمَغْرِبِ مَا لَمْ يَغِبْ الشَّفَقِ. The time of Maghrib is from sunset and until before the Shafaq also disappears. The time of Salat al-Isha, from that time, from the disappearance of Shafaq until the midnight. And Salat al-Subh from Fajr, of course, until before the sun rises. Now, let's talk more about Salat al-Dhuhr, and then we'll talk about every Salah separately. As we said, Salat al-Dhuhr starts from the time of Zawal, right, until the shade of an object becomes as long as the object itself, right? So this is the time of Dhuhr. This might, in some days, the winter time is shorter than the time of the summer. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to delay Salat al-Dhuhr intentionally in the days when it is very hot. It gets really, really hot, and it's very difficult for people to leave their homes and to drive to the masjid and pray Dhuhr in Jama'ah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to delay the Salat al-Dhuhr until the weather cools down. It's called Ibrad. Ibrad comes from the word Bard. So just wait until this extensive heat goes away. When it is very cold, he prays Dhuhr just on time. What does this mean? In the beginning of the time, I mean. What does this mean? So you have these, like say 2 hours. You can pray Dhuhr at any time, these 2 hours. So in the summer, he delays Dhuhr because it gets very hot. But in the winter time, he prays in the beginning of the time. What does this mean?
Make it comfortable.
Exactly, make it easy for people. Right? So Rasulullah is the Imam, and we have given this flexibility. This is the time of Dhuhr. You can pray at any time. It's always good to pray in the beginning of the time, as a general ruling, but when it gets really hot, you know that people love to come pray in the masjid, Jama'ah, and it gets very difficult. So he ﷺ delayed it in the summer. But in the winter, it's warmer actually at the time of Dhuhr. So you pray Dhuhr in the beginning of the time. So you need to consider also the condition of the people. Right? That's why we are discussing now and considering this Shafaq Ahmar and Abyad, because if it is possible for us to start Isha and Taraweeh in Ramadan earlier, 20 minutes earlier, why not? Right? Make it earlier so people can go home earlier, sleep at night, wake up before suhoor and so on. Now, even Hanafi scholars, I mean, they looked at it. I mean, Dr. Khalid Chowkat actually talked about this. And if you go to his website, you'll find the red shafaq, white shafaq, you know, how to calculate the Isha time, and general. And I told him, what's this general thing? He said, this is like the time between the red and the white. He said, we go in somewhere in between. I said, why? I said, just to make it easy for people. In the summer, especially those who live in the north side, in Europe, and it gets very late. You start Isha after midnight, literally. Isha at the beginning of Isha, you know. So, and this is actually the opinion of some modern Hanafi scholars. He said that it's very late now. Isha is very late. So, you don't have to go with one of the two, just go with the average. They call it general. Hanafi general. And then there's Ahmar and there's Abyad. Right? This is, I'm just giving you some idea about what it is. So if you go to the website and you'll find out what Ahmar, Abyad and general. So Ahmar, you'll find also next to it Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali. Okay? This is the Ahmar. Next to Hanafi, so Abyad. Right? And the Hanafi general is between Abyad and Ahmar. This is Hanafi, called Hanafi general. Alright? So, now, the time of Salat al-Asr, the beginning of time of Salat al-Asr. Again, you will be surprised to know that many of Hanafi scholars, including the two great students from Abu Hanifa, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani and Abu Yusuf, Imam al-Tahawi, great Hanafi Imam, are joining Imam al-Shafi'i, Maliki and Hanbali in saying that the beginning of the time of Asr and the end of the time of Dhuhr is when the shade of the object is double the length of the object itself. Double.
That's the end.
So when the shade is double, the length of the shade is double the object, this is the end of Dhuhr and the beginning of Asr. Right? And in order to pray on time, to حافظوا على الصلاة والصلاة الوسطى, it's always better to pray on time. So this is the end of Dhuhr, this is the beginning of Asr. This is around 45 minutes earlier than our Asr Adhan time. And that's very good. If you go to any Salah calendar, you'll find, Hanafi, and then versus Hanafi, the rest of the madhahib, basically.
Standard.
Well, that's a more diplomatic terminology, because standard. Others write it Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. Yeah. But I'm adding to you that Muhammad ibn al-Hasan and Imam Abu Yusuf are also joining this opinion. Interestingly, Imam al-Sarakhsi, one of the Shamsul A'imma, one of the greatest Imams in the Hanafi madhab, he said that Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, one of the narrations that he used to write, what Abu Hanifa says, he said one of the narrations of Muhammad al-Hasan from Abu Hanifa is that this is the time. But the late Hanafis, they are more strict when it comes to the beginning of Asr time. Okay, so I'm just telling you what I found in the books, so I'm not making something up. Well, I'm not going to change this, by the way, just if you are a little nervous, we don't have to change it.
So these Imams agreed to the time of
Asr, the beginning of time of Asr.
Same as the shadow length is the same as the object. Are they agreeing to that, or?
No.
No, 1:1 is the
1:1
end
is
of
the
Zohar.
Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki.
Yes. They said the time of Asr when what did I say? When the shade is equal to the object. I'm sorry, it's not
Equal to
double.
the object is the end of Zohar.
Yes, this is the end of Zohar, the beginning of Asr.
Beginning of Asr.
Right. So Zawal at the Zawal you start developing the shade, and as this shade gets longer and becomes as equal and the object itself, then this is the beginning of Asr. Did I say double?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. So the beginning of Asr, which is the end of Dhuhr, according to these three madhahib, is when the shade is equal to the object.
Right. Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay. Imam Abu Hanifa, he said no, when it's double, this is the beginning of Asr time. So it adds more time.
More time for Zohar and
For Zohar and the beginning of Asr. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said only Imam Abu Hanifa who adopted this opinion. So, what are the arguments of both opinions? This is one of the things that surprised me when I came to IAGD. Because the next masjid, 10 minutes after that Qama is made, and there's no way to delay it. And especially Salat al-Asr, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, حافظوا على الصلاة الوسطى. So, Hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, the Imam of Jibreel came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he told him this is the beginning and this is the end. So the beginning was Zawal and the end when the shade was equal to the object. So between these two is Dhuhr. So this is the first dalil for these three madhahib. Another hadith Anas ibn Malik, and hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. Very interesting, very clear. Hadith Anas radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet ﷺ used to say to pray Asr when the sun is high and hayya. Hayya means alive. When it is high and alive. And a person may go to Al-Awali. Al-Awali is like different. Awali, the plural of Ali. Ali means heights. Right? To go to these heights, and another narration to Masjid Quba while the sun is still high and alive. You pray Asr with Rasulullah, and you may go that far. Some said 3 miles, others said about 3 to 5 miles. So a person, after he finished Salah with Rasulullah, he might go that far while the sun is still high and strong. Hadith Anas in Bukhari and Muslim. And if you add this Hadith Anas to Hadith Imamat Jibreel, when Jibreel came to lead Salah with Rasulullah or pray with the Prophet in the beginning and the end of the Salah. So, and there are also Hadith, but these are perhaps the strongest dalil that this is the Salah, this is the beginning of Asr and the end of Dhuhr. Right?
So what is the measure of high? How can one say that yes, it is really high?
No, the high means that if you look at the sun after Asr, the shape of the sun, the kind of light, the ray of the sun, in the middle of the day is different from Asr, and from Asr every 10-15 minutes it takes different shapes until it gets very weak and then die. It's a metaphorical use.
Yes, not definitive.
Yes.
So if you say high, my definition of high could be something different than your definition of high.
But if we both were alive at that time and we heard someone saying the sun is still alive, we'll understand what it means. It's a metaphorical meaning of being strong, still strong. Because it gets weaker. So he used this metaphorical expression to say that the sun is still alive, strong, young. And then as if it's like a human, when you get old and old and old and older and then die. Right? So the sun does not die. Right? But he used this expression. This word tafi'a means high. It's not near the horizon. Right? And it's not dead when it sets. So Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu said that the time of Asr begins when the shade is double. And he relied on 2 adillah, and these 2 adillah, the other ulama also responded to this. The first dalil is It's a long hadith that the meaning of the hadith is that the similarity between you and the nations who came before you is like the Jews and Christians and yourself. So they were given the guidance and they got one qiraat and did not fulfill it, did not follow it completely. They got one qiraat and then the next got another qiraat, and you came later and you got double qiraat. And these nations said, Ya Allah, these people came after us, which means that they stayed less. They came after us, and the time that you spend is equal to the time between Asr and Maghrib, which means that it's shorter. So, though you came later, okay, but you got double reward. So he said from that, the time between Asr and Maghrib, he used this analogy, should be shorter than the time between Dhuhr and Asr. And therefore, Asr should be delayed to the point where the shade is doubled. You get the point? So the other ulama said the time between Dhuhr and Asr anyways is longer than the time between Asr at all times. So there's no point. Where you get this? I mean, the hadith is clear that the time between Asr and Maghrib is shorter between the time between Dhuhr and Asr. But this is the case at all times, at all places. But this is no clear, definitive evidence that Asr should be delayed to make it even shorter. The other evidence, they used the hadith of Rasulullah who said that delay Dhuhr whether it's very hot, right? So abridu with Dhuhr. Abridu means delay Dhuhr until the time or the weather is cooler. And he said this time the weather will never get cooler until you reach this point. In other words, if you, according to Abu Hanifa, his understanding from this is that if the reason of delaying Dhuhr when it's very hot is to wait until it cools down a little bit, then there's no point to say the end of Salat al-Dhuhr is when the shade is equal to the object, because it's still hot. So, based on these two arguments or two ahadith, he said that the time of Asr should be delayed further. Again, the ulama responded to these two arguments. Bottom line is, the mass majority of Muslim scholars are with the opinion that the end of Dhuhr and the beginning of Asr is when the shade is as long as the object itself. Only Imam Abu Hanifa and the late Hanafi scholars who argue that no, the beginning of Asr is when the shade is double. From this we understand that if you pray in a masjid that pray Asr right on their Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali, Abu Yusuf, Muhammad ibn Hassan time, then you pray with them. Don't feel, no, it's not Asr time yet. No, because we pray at 6:30, man. It's 5:30 here. So they pray too early. They're not praying too early. No, this is the time for them. And similarly, many people ask this question: how come we delay Asr that much? And Asr these days, you have these apps. Anybody have this prayer time? You don't have this? This Adhan app. Just right. I recommend this. And you can adjust it. Hanafi or standard. Standard.
It says that.
Yeah. So if you come to pray IAGD, keep it Hanafi, right? If you're going elsewhere, or if you want to leave home, go for shopping, and it's 5:30, you want to go and you pray Asr at home, you can pray actually Shafi'i, Maliki, and then you go. And this is, by the way, what we do here after second Jum'ah, if you know.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Right? So what do we do? We pray the second Jum'ah and we'll pray Asr, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali. Why? Because we're here, man. We're already here. Let's pray Asr and go home. Otherwise, if you want to be strictly Hanafi, then you end second Salat Jum'ah around 3 o'clock. You go home and come back at 4:15. No, we'll be Shafi'i today.
Still they do asr.
Yeah, we do. No, but those who pray us,
They are lazy people.
no, but the majority of people pray us that time, that day.
Most of the people who are here,
The mass majority, I would say, if you compare the number of those who pray us on Jum'ah in the winter, here the masjid is full.
yeah.
And those who pray later, I would argue 5-6 people.
Yes.
You don't have one line. Alright? So, Salat al-Maghrib, there's no... before we go into Salat al-Maghrib, the end of Salat al-Asr. Imam al-Nawawi was a great Shafi'i scholar, and he also wrote commentary or interpretation of Sahih Muslim. So he said that for in our madhab there are 5 times for Asr. And this to understand that the different times between Asr and Maghrib. He said there are 5 times. Waqt, called Waqt Fadila. Fadila means the preference, or preferred time, and the time of ikhtiyar, choice, and the time of permissibility without any karaha, and the time of permissibility with karaha, and the time of udhr or excuse. Okay, we'll explain this. So the time of fadila is the best. So the best time to pray Asr is the beginning of the time. And the time of ikhtiyar or choice, the time that you may delay Asr to. This is the next time, right? It's choice. Yeah, you can pray in the very beginning of the time, or you may delay it a little bit. That you're still in the time of choice. And there's a time of permissibility without any karah. You still can delay it a little further without any karah. So you have fadila, choice, permissibility without karaha, and then beyond this point you will start the beginning of the time that we call permissibility. Still permissible, but it is disliked to delay it that far. And if you don't pray on that time, or in that time, then the next prayer will be the time of udhr. Udhr means that time of excuse. You have an excuse. You cannot pray in the fadila, in the ikhtiyar, in the jawaz without karaha, in jawaz with karaha. You're asleep, or you're like landing in your town, so you have no time to pray. So if you reach this point, you must have an excuse. Otherwise, it's not allowed to delay us that far. This is like the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes before Maghrib, when the sun comes orange and it's very near to the horizon. You don't want to delay us that far unless you have a valid excuse. Alright? So we have 3 times where it is permissible without any problem. It's good if you delay, if you pray in the beginning, in the middle, or the end of these 3 period of time. It's good. If it's makruh to delay it further, and it is very much makruh to delay it that far unless you have an excuse. So this gives you an idea about the times according to understanding of the ulama. However, if you pray one rak'ah, one full rak'ah of Asr before the sun sets, then you pray Asr on time. Although it is makruh, unless you have an excuse. But you have an excuse. You don't have enough time, don't find a place to pray, whatever the reason is, and you prayed one full rak'ah, and then you hear the adhan Maghrib, then this will count as Asr on time. Although you pray 3 rak'ahs after the sunset. But if you pray 1 rak'ah, according to the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who explained that من صلى من العصر ركعة قبل أن تغرب الشمس ثم صلى ما بقي بعد غروب الشمس لم يفته العصر. Another hadith narrated by the Jama'ah, all scholars of hadith. من أدرك ركعة من العصر قبل أن تغرب الشمس فقد أدرك العصر. Whoever prayed 1 full rak'ah before the sun sets, then he catch the Asr on time. So now we can understand that there is waqt ikhtiyar, waqt karah. It's makruh from the moment of permissibility with qira'ah to the end, it is makruh to pray Asr or to delay Asr that far, right? But if you have an excuse, then you pray it, try to pray it before Maghrib. Especially on the days when there is a lot of clouds, then you ought to pray in the beginning of the time. But at that time, they don't know exactly whether Maghrib is there or not because it's very cloudy. So when it gets cloudy, they pray always in the beginning. You don't want to delay it because if you may delay it until the Maghrib time comes and you not notice the difference, right? We have only 7 minutes, so we'll stop here inshallah and we'll continue next week. Questions? No questions after Isha. We'll talk about Isha. Rasulullah used to go and sleep after Isha. So no talks after Isha. Yes?
Are we going to talk about Jummah timing and...
Yes. Jummah will speak special about Jummah. All things about Jummah will take one.
For Maghrib, we have to wait for a couple of minutes for sun to set down?
Well, some people like to do this, especially in Ramadan. They add a minute. Some even add 2 minutes. Because they said it depends on your the latitude and the place you're in and so on. But some people sometimes have doubt because sometimes we hear the adhan of Maghrib and we still see not the sun, but we can see a little light there. Because it depends also on the amount of clouds, humidity, and all these kind of things. So the reflection, the sun is not there, the sun set. But the reflection on the sunlight is there because of the cloud and the humidity and all these kind of... So you feel as if the sun did not totally set.
Just for Ramadan.
I'm saying some people like to do that. I'm not saying this is the best thing to do. Because we should end our fasting when we know that the sun sets. Right? So if you know, you don't have to, by the way, to have 100% yaqeen. If you know this is the sunset, then you can pray Maghrib or eat something if you're fasting. But some people like to add a minute or two, or take away a minute or two from Fajr in Ramadan. So if the adhan is like, let's say 6:30, they make it 6:28. So just to make sure that you do not eat or drink anything in the time of Fajr. I'm personally against this. However, even within Mission, Southeast Mission, it varies from one masjid to the other. If you are in Warren, is different from West Bloomfield. You will have some difference. So what does this require is to observe the sunset and the sunrise and both all around the year in your area. And from this data, then you can come up with a calendar that's more accurate. But now, we cannot be 100% accurate in everything we do in our salat. Qibla direction, timing, hilal, and beginning of Ramadan, and anything. We cannot. And لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها.
Due to whatever the valid reason, you reached for Maghrib, and by that time you didn't pray the Asr, but Maghrib Azan started. So you should pray Asr first or just...
If you enter the masjid and Jama'ah is there, the general ruling is that you join the Jama'ah. Because you missed the time of Asr already. Then these are Jama'ah, you cannot pray any other prayer while Jama'ah is going on. You join the Jama'ah, and when you're done with Maghrib, then go and pray Asr. Some came up with a very strange opinion. They said that you join the Jama'ah, and then you pray Asr, and then pray Maghrib again, to keep the order. So you join the Jama'ah because you should join the Jama'ah. Pray Maghrib with them. And then pray Asr. And then pray. That's not correct. You join the Jama'ah, pray Maghrib, and that's it. Then pray Asr. Okay? So, generally, if you have a valid excuse, you are sleeping, you forgot, Salah or whatever, then you pray when you are able to pray. So you came to the masjid, you find the Jama'ah, join the Jama'ah. And then pray the prayer you missed after that. This is the exception. We usually pray Asr before Maghrib, but in this particular case, you pray Jama'ah. If you find that if there is no Jama'ah, right, then you pray Asr and then pray Maghrib. Right? Yes.
I know it's just a mandatory as far as you reach the udhr,
If somebody is asleep, does that qualify as a udhr? If I know,
Very much, very much.
So you don't wake them up and say it adhan, or you give them.
For you as a person who's sleeping, رفع القلم عن النائم حتى يستيقظ. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, ليس في النوم تفريط إنما التفريط في اليقظة. If you are asleep, you are not responsible. Now, with your brother or your wife, do they have to wake you up? Do they have to? Do they have to? Or it's recommended for them to wake you up? Right? If you told your wife, okay, wake me up if, I'm going to sleep before Asr, I'm tired, I know I can't sleep until Isha, so wake me up to pray Asr for it, then she should wake you up. What if she lets you sleep? Now.
Can you pray in the vehicle when you are traveling?
Oh, let me finish this yet. Let me finish this. I thought you were going to answer this. So, I would say it is recommended, but it's not obligatory. I would say that. It's not obligatory. It is recommended, it's from ta'awanu al-birr wa taqwa, but in your right, you are not responsible. Rasulullah ﷺ said, من نام عن صلاة أو نسيها فليصليها إذا ذكرها ليس لها كفارة إلا ذلك. من نام عن صلاة أو نسيها فليصليها إذا ذكرها. Once you wake up or once you remember, the first thing you should do is to pray. Right? There's no kafara other than this.
Is it mandatory to wake that person get up and...
No. I know some will disagree with me, but it's not obligatory. Unless you and your wife, for example, you have this habit. You wake, why didn't you wake me up? And you scream at her. So next time, she will wake you up. But would she sin if she did not wake you up? I don't think so. Allahu A'lam. Now,
yeah, if you are.
You said you are traveling.
Yeah, you are passenger. Can you pray in the vehicle?
Well, if you have no other option, if you are flying, right, or if you are in a train, then you sit down and pray. You cannot stand in prayer. Then originally you have to stand for prayer. But if you cannot, like wudu, you have to make wudu. If there's no wudu, then make tayammum. You must stand, but you cannot stand. Not because you are physically able, but the train is running or there's no place for you to stand and pray. You pray while sitting down. But you have to pray on time. الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا. It's time. It has a beginning and has an end. So you must pray on time. And when you are in the airplane, you have to observe the sun and the aircraft. If you are flying overnight, then you are responsible to see when the Fajr is there. You can see it easily, very easily, because the watch is not going to help you. Unless you have one of these watches that's connected to the satellite, that's a different story. But when you are above the Atlantic Ocean, you don't know what time is Fajr. But you just look at the window and you can see it easily. Then if you have wudu, pray. If you don't have wudu, make wudu and pray. Yeah, you have to pray. Did this answer the question?
Yes.
Make sure you tell the neighbor you're praying.
You what?
Make sure you tell the other guys you're going to pray. Otherwise, they're terrorists.
This is not in our books of fiqh. These are recommendations.
My brother, mother.
Yeah. Isha time? Okay, it is 10 o'clock. Inshallah, you know what? You can ask me tomorrow because I will leave right after Isha.